Hey everyone, it's Kristen, and again we're talking about God loves, man kills. A very profound story. Um, and as I talked about in the last video, now we get to the really disturbing part. Like I like I said, I read it again and thought, wow. Like it is disturbing on more than just one level. I mean, anyway, we'll just get into it. So he was, he was in the military. He was an Army Ranger. He and his wife, he had just finished his tour. The military said it wouldn't be that dangerous. So they were on their way to visit his family in Phoenix when, their car got hit. So they didn't make it. So his wife, Marcy, was pregnant at the time. And so alone in the desert, he delivered the baby, by himself. And he delivered his son. And what he says, this is a quote from here, it was a monster. So faced with that abomination, I did what I had to be done. You can see he has a knife. It's dripped in blood. So he killed his son because he looked different. Just killed him. And then when his wife Marcy, who's a little, kind of halfway conscious, asked for their son, this is even more disturbing. You know what he did? He took his arms and he broke her neck. Just snapped her neck. So she died too. And, he was, of course, like you see him in the panel, he's remorseful. And he realized the car's leaking, then it could explode, at any moment. So he puts the baby, their son that he killed, and his wife that he killed, into the car and climbs back in the car himself and lights it on fire. So he intended to kill himself also, which, does not make up for the fact that he killed his son and his wife. But that's what he intended to do. But he was thrown from the car, so he survived. And he, went on this downward spiral. Like the Army, because he was a decorated war hero, let some of his behavior slide, and he just suffered a terrible loss. But then, of course, eventually they're like, we're done. You're kicked out. We need you to leave. You're done. And so after, he one day read a paper by or a magazine article by Charles Xavier about mutants. So then that's when he realized what his son was, or what it was, because he said he, and then he said it. And he also thought, went through this period where he's like, so, because, people talk a lot about, the sins of the father, people were punished because of the, and that was, in the Old Testament, you heard stories about that. Like somebody was punished because of the sins of their father, like they were blind or lame because of the sins of what the father had done, that sort of thing. And so he thought, what have I done that's so atrocious? Why is God punishing me? And then this is my mouth dropped open when I read this. I mean, and then he's like, I prayed for guidance and it was given to me. This is, the evil, the sin, was Marcy's, not mine. So he blamed his wife. I was like, wow, way to take responsibility for the fact that you killed your son and your wife, and now you're going to say, oh, well, it was not my fault, it was Marcy's fault, because apparently she was sinful, or her parents were sinful, and so that's why this thing was born to us. It wasn't my fault, it wasn't me. Like I said, my mouth dropped open, and I'm like, wow, that's messed up. And he also said, that his wife was used to show him that, Satan's plan to corrupt us through our children. Basically, that Satan was implanting and infiltrating the human race using mutants and, disguised as our children. And so these mutants were not of the human race, but they were of the devil, because the devil had planted them there. And so his task was to rid the world of mutants, and that's the task that God gave him, because, you know, because like Satan had, implanted this whole scheme in order to, like, get rid of humanity eventually through his soldiers, his demons, as he called mutants, that were, in the form of, like, our kids. Anyway, so that's like, he's like, I have a mission now, and that's why, like, that was shown to me, and like, I just, again, mouth drop, wow, that's messed up. So, and, Cyclops was like, how did you even learn about the X-Men? How did you even know about us? And he's like, well, like, a federal government liaison, gave me all this info, so that's how I knew. And he's like, well, I don't understand, if we're such a threat, why didn't you just kill us? That's what Cyclops says. And the Reverend says, you'll see soon enough, because he needs Xavier to wipe out everybody. Like, he can't do it by himself. So he needs Xavier to use his powers to wipe everyone out. All the mutants, I mean. So, basically, there's a couple pages, couple panels, where they're chasing Kitty, because she escaped, because she can phase. They're chasing Kitty through the city. Sorry, that rhymed. In order to, track her down to kill her. And she eventually, like, goes to the subway, and she's just exhausted, and she just can't do it. And this police officer comes along and, like, what's the problem? And she's like, some people are trying to kill me. And he's like, get behind me, I'll protect you. And the purifiers, like, they shoot him. And she's like, I can't run. And he's badly wounded, and I can't leave him. And so she's saved by Magneto. Well, accompanied by the X-Men, but mostly Magneto. And he actually, even though this officer is a human, he takes the bullet out of the officer and actually uses his powers to transport the officer to the hospital, which I thought was pretty cool. I mean, because you know how much Magneto, like, hates humans or, like, dislikes them. He doesn't, sometimes, honestly, he's like, what's another dead human? Who cares? So, and that's only because of humans, there's immediate dislike of mutants just because of they're different, like, don't get to know them, whatever. And so that's how Magneto feels about humans. Like, he retaliates in that way. So, Stryker approaches Xavier again, like, in his mind, and says, hey, are you worthy? Like, would you, like, are you ready to embrace the word and myself as the deliverer of the word? And Xavier says, yes. And he's like, prove it, kill your students. And he's like, I can't. And he's like, then he quotes the Bible, Old Testament again. Like I said, very important. So, and then he's, Xavier supposedly kills Cyclops and Storm. But we all know they're not really dead. But we don't find that out until, like, a couple of pages later. But still, we know they're not dead. So Wolverine, he's like, he knows all, apparently. He's like, they're not dead. He just put them in some kind of stasis. A hefty jolt of electricity, should revive them. Because electricity and magnetism are related. So, Magneto uses his powers to, like, jolt him awake. And they're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And they explain what's going on. And Magneto's like, basically, Magneto's like, I'm not your enemy, X-Men. Like, you see what's going on. You see how humans, like, hate us and distrust us. Why? Why do you still defend them? Like, I can use my powers and the powers of my brothers and sisters to create, basically, a place where our race can live in peace. And so basically, a mutant dictatorship, one of them comments. And he's like, no, it's not a dictatorship. It's, I've lived under a dictatorship, because he has. And my family was butchered by its servants. When I rule, it will be for the betterment of all. That's what Magneto says. The freedoms lost will not be noticed, even in the most libertarian of states, and the material benefits should more than balance the scales. And then Scott says, anyone can create a utopia, Magneto, for a single generation. The trick is making it last. Who preserves your dream after you're gone? And he says, you guys, you will. Consider my fate. Consider my offer, X-Men. We shall speak of this again. And he flies off. So basically, Stryker's giving this huge, not a conference. He's going to do a sermon. And all the newscasters are invited. He invited, a bunch of world leaders and evangelists. But, this reporter outside the stadium basically says, a growing number of religious leaders, including fundamental evangelistic ministers who were only a short while ago were Stryker's friends and allies, have begun to question the direction of his crusade. So people, and it says, it is one thing, they note, to criticize government policy and the moral state of the nation, quite another to single out a specific group of people and brand them as literally less than human. To many, it speaks an attitude uncomfortably reminiscent of that held in Nazi Germany against the Jews. Like I said, that's why I believe Magneto resonates the most. He can relate to this the most because he was there. He felt that. His family died under that. So I get why he is so opposed to him, and as he should be, so opposed to Stryker, as he should be, because he's crazy. He's gone off the rails. I mean, like it said in here, even people that were his friends and supported him, they all of a sudden questioned him. Whoa, you're going a little bit too far there. I mean, that's just not right. That's, it's one thing to do this, but to go there, that's too far. And Stryker, he doesn't realize it. He's so deranged that he's just nope, this is the path that I'm on. This is what God's called me to do. This is what I'm going to do. It's crazy. So his right-hand man, which is a woman, her name's Anne, she escaped to tell Stryker the X-Men are coming to free Xavier. We need to hurry. So he says, it's no consequence, they won't succeed, God's on my side. What can they do to stop me? Which we'll find out in the next one, because this one's, I guess, running a little long. There's a lot to talk about with this story. So we'll do the conclusion of this story, and then we'll talk about part 2, the 2003, because that's actually a more, I will say, a simpler story. It's a part 2 continuation of this story, but you'll see. It's far simpler. It doesn't have this huge weight to it, I will say, as the first one did. So we'll talk about that in the next episode. So I hope you join me for that. And until next time, bye.